Martinez. Stivar. Wharf. Madam Chairman. We have 7 present, Madam Chairman.
Good morning, everybody. This is welcome to the Labor Committee. We are considering today House Bill 137, Medicaid birth cost recovery repeal. This has been sort of a multi-year discussion. I remember it first came through back when I was on appropriations. So that was 2017, 2018, somewhere in there, I think. So the bill is brought by Representative Yin and carry on, Representative Yin.
Thank you, Madam Chairman and members of the committee. So I bring before you House Bill 137, Medicaid Birth Cost Recovery Repeal. This was a program enacted in 2018 before I came to the legislature. It was a bill that was an attempt to recover monies from Medicaid births. In the end, though, it, as you can see in the fiscal note, cost more money per fiscal year than it does recover each fiscal year. So I think after 3 years, it seemed appropriate to bring a repeal bill, especially in the light of our budget crisis, as well as trying to figure out what are the places where we need to prioritize and redirect our services. And I think this is one where we can make that decision. I think DFS said that they would be here available for questions, but it's not a really complicated bill. But I would be happy to ask any questions, as I was on the Labor and Health Committee the 2 years prior to this and was there for all of the interim reports that we were given about this program over the course of those 2 years.
Representative Yin, we do have DFS signed up to be able to present it, but the committee is extremely new. Sadly, not all the new. Bonnie, what happened to Representative Wharf? He came and stood
Madam
next to you.
Chairman, he had to.
Oh, that's right.
present
He left you
some
there. I remember
bills
now.
in
I remember.
judiciary.
Thank you. He did talk to me about that on Friday. I forgot. And I think Representative Stivar actually had the same. Did he leave you his vote as well? Okay.
Madam
Great.
Chairman,
All right.
we both switched places. I'm supposed to be in judiciary right now. So I'm presenting.
All right, we'll try to be fast then. But so there are a lot of new people. As a matter of fact, nearly everyone up here, other than Representative Hallinan and myself, are new. So if you could, and I appreciate, I don't know if Representative Stith is intending to testify, and DFS, of course, will be available, but I think we will need to have at least a 5-minute explanation of who we were trying to get Medicaid costs, birth costs from, and what the challenges were or what the process was, the different roles that the different agencies play. If you feel up to that, if not, we can probably get that from DFS, but just so that people are up to speed.
I would be happy to, Madam Chairman. So members of the committee, this was, if you want to look it up, it is in legislation 2018, House Bill 86. And what it intended to do was to recover costs from fathers who were not married to the birth mothers. And the idea was that there possibly could be people who purposely were not married to avoid not qualifying for Medicaid. So if that mother could qualify for Medicaid as a single mother, then they could get their costs covered by Medicaid. and the father could make as much money as possible. I think in the end, it turned out that this is kind of squeezing blood from a stone. There aren't that many families where that would be the case. And so if you can see in the handout that I emailed to you, there were some judgments that were more than they actually recovered, but even then, the actual birth costs were $21 million, and the judgments only amounted to 200,000. So that's about 1% of what they were able to recover in judgment. So I think the idea of that many people being able to afford that or being able to recover that just didn't end up being the case.
Questions for Representative Yin? And just fleshing out when we do have DFS on here, the reason why DFS is on is because the program runs through, and I'm just speaking kind of from my recollection here, I haven't done past, but the program is not run out of the Medicaid office. The program is run out of the child support unit in DFS. So DFS has a unit where, typically if a family, whether it's divorced or not, but where a custodial parent, files in court to get child support from the other parent of the children. And that's the place where this program sits. I guess I'm not presenting the bill myself, so but that will explain perhaps why we're going to have DFS on. So I don't see any questions for Representative Yin right now. Representative Stivart, or I'm sorry, Representative Stiff, do you have anything that you would like to present? And Representative Stiff was the original bringer of the first bill.
Madam Chairman, members of the committee, thank you for letting me present today on this bill. This bill would, of course, repeal the Medicaid Fairness Act. So what is our current situation? In Wyoming today, depending upon the year, somewhere between 35% and 40% of all births in Wyoming, as many as 40% of all births are paid for by Title 19 Medicaid. So essentially the taxpayer is paying for 40% of the births, right? Our unemployment rate's about, depending upon the year, 4, 5, 6%. 5% is typical. So what does that tell you? That tells you that there are a lot of employed fathers out there, right? Because our unemployment rate tends to be low. A lot of employed fathers, right, who right now, or who before the enactment of this, were not obligated to pay anything for the birth of their child, right? So it's good public policy when we treat similarly situated people similarly, right? That's a goal of the law. And if I could use an example of 3 different families who are identical, if you have a man and a woman and a newborn child, man and a woman, newborn child, man and a woman, newborn child, they're all 3 the same. But without this bill, they all get treated differently, okay? Because in our first family, we have the mother being not working outside the home. She's not working outside the home. The father is, for example, working as a computer software programmer making $80,000 a year, okay? But if they're not married, but they're an intact home, right? They're an intact home. The mother qualifies for Medicaid, and so when she gives birth, Medicaid Title 19 pays for the cost of the birth. That's in the next family. If you have the man and the woman and the newborn child, but in that case, if the woman is the computer software programmer and if the man does not work outside the home, then she's not eligible for Medicaid because she makes too much money. If she's making $80,000 a year, she would never qualify to have Medicaid pay for the birth of her child. And then our next family, and again, in that second family, the man and the woman are not married to each other. Now our third family, you have a man and a woman, and let's imagine that they are married to each other. So if they're married to each other, then both of their incomes count toward eligibility. So if you have, for example, the man in that situation who's working, making $60,000 or $70,000 a year, they're married, she's not working outside the home, she would not qualify for Medicaid because their household income is too high. Okay, so the unfairness. So what do we call a law? So we have in the first two families, we have a parent, one of whom is eligible to have the taxpayers pay for their child and the other whom is not. And the only difference between the two parents is their gender. And so laws when the state of the law is such that you get treated differently based upon your gender, that's undesirable. And it's also undesirable to treat people differently based upon their marital status, frankly. So that's why it's called the Medicaid Fairness Act. Under the original bill, the people targeted are single fathers who are higher income. It's means tested so that, and it was a complicated formula, frankly, but if you are making more than 200% of the federal poverty level, then you could be, as the father, you could be required to pay up to 1/2 of the average Medicaid birth cost. Okay, it's capped in the original bill, in statute now. It's capped. So if, for example, you have a really expensive birth that cost $100,000 because you have a lot of prenatal care, for example, the bill and now statute caps it so that the most you can be tagged with is 1/2 of the average cost. I don't have the numbers exactly in front of me, DFS might, but the average cost is about, say, $7,000 or $8,000, maybe $9,000, I'm not quite sure. So as a father, the most under this bill that you can be required to pay, most you can be required to pay is about $4,000, 1/2 of whatever the average is. That's the law right now. So it's means tested. Now, this program, Representative Yin is exactly right that this program is not working very well. It's certainly not working the way I had hoped. Medicaid spends about $24 million a year on this program for these births that occur. Right? So we're spending about $24 million, right? And there were a lot of hearings that this committee held about, is this working and why is it not working, right? The core reason that it's not working is because of something called, is because most of the higher income fathers are living with the mother, right? And those fathers are invisible to DFS. And they're invisible to DFS because the mother is not asking for child support. Why should she? She doesn't need to. They're an intact home, right? And because the mother has not asked DFS to start a child support case, DFS does not have a mechanism to identify those fathers. There's something called the Federal Parental Locator Service. And I do want to give a shout out in admiration and praise for our Department of Family Services. They do a fantastic job generally on child support. They really do. Typically, Wyoming ranks #1 in the country for child support enforcement. The rate of identifying fathers for child support cases is extremely high. I'm not sure if it's 98% or 99%. But if you are a father and you are the subject of a child support enforcement case, you can't hide. They find you, okay? And the reason they find you is because of something called the Federal Parental Locator Service. That service is a federal database that's available to DFS when there's a child support case, right? But the way we've got the statute set up, if it's an intact home and the mom is not asking for child support, there's no child support case, and DFS believes that it's not allowed to use the Federal Parental Locator Service. So as a result, where all the money is are these intact homes that are invisible to the agency, essentially. Okay, so what's the fix for that? Well, we could repeal the statute. You could do that. I mean, you can vote yes on this bill and we can repeal the statute. But the problem with that, from my point of view, is that we have undesirable public policy. That is, we'll have a lot of higher income fathers who are not contributing anything to the birth of their children. And it's just it's not fair. And we'll be treating similarly situated people differently instead of treating them the same. So there are a number of fixes that you could do. And it's understandable that the DFS, which has a lot of things to do, and they're also cutting their budget, doesn't have extra resources to devote to this. You could either define this as child support to create, sort of involuntarily create a child support enforcement case. That would be one thing. I'm not sure that's the best way to do it. Another thing you could do that I think would make sense would be to say, look, DFS really, they're not bill collectors. That's not what they're set up to do. They don't really like doing that in this way. You could delegate the responsibility for the enforcement of this to the Attorney General's office, and then give the Attorney General the authority to simply hire a collection agency. That would not violate any federal law. And the collection agencies, they know how to find people. I mean, it's the 21st century. To say that we can't find the fathers is not reality. I understand the mechanism that we have that results in DFS not being able to identify the higher income fathers. So what if we did that? What if we, instead of repeal, we did that? Would that work? Or would that be a waste of time and money? It's hard to know, of course. The statistical analysis that the Department of Health did 3 years ago when we were initially looking at this was that you've got $24 million you're spending. If you are below median income, if you are below 200% of the poverty level, if I recall it correctly, and it might be, anyway, and I apologize that I don't have the exact numbers in front of me, but if you're poor, then you as a father are not obligated to pay anything at all. That's how the statute works, essentially. And I apologize, I don't have the exact scale, but it was a sliding scale. So at the end of the day, of this $24 million, what you could reasonably collect in a year would probably be about $2 million. So not a huge amount, but also not nothing. So I believe, so on and against this bill, I would like us to try to fix it rather than to throw it out. And again, even if this program doesn't make money, it's still the right thing to do because it's the Fairness Act. We should treat similarly situated people similarly. And thank you for your patience listening to that long speech.
Questions for Representative Stith? Representative Flitner.
Madam Chairman, thank you. And Representative Stith, I appreciate your testimony. Thank you. Of the 30 to 40% of births paid by Medicaid, is there any data to determine how many fathers within that parameter would be able to pay or help pay? I'm just curious to know, like when you give the example of the 3 families, and so within that 30 to 40%, how many within that group would, break down and to be the father that has the ability to pay?
Representative Stith.
Madam Chairman, Representative Flitner, that's a great question. That is unknown. I apologize. I just don't have good data on that. I recall that being, obviously that's an important thing to know. And it's something I simply don't know. I don't think we've ever had a great handle on that, to be honest.
And we do have someone from the Medicaid program. It will be online to testify. So, I mean, they may not know any better, but they will be there. Representative Hallinan.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Representative Stith, this kind of reminds me of Tom Wolfe's book. I don't remember the name. I can't remember the name of the book, but they were looking for the great white victim or the great white criminal all of the time. And now you're looking for these people that are wealthy, that are living with these unmarried women. I don't think there are very many of those. I think that's why we can't really, I wonder how many DFS has found that are people that are wealthy enough to pay into this program. I don't think it's a very high number. In my experience, delivering a lot of unmarried women on DFS, there were very few that had a wealthy boyfriend. I think they were just poor and their boyfriend was poor and they were both poor. I think it's unusual that you're going to find this wealthy group that is living with these women. I don't think that, I think in my experience, there are very few of those. I don't think I even had one. Well, I maybe had one. I can think of one. one case. Thank you, Madam
And
Chairman.
what was your question, Representative
Well,
Hallinan?
my question is,
Doesn't he agree?
I don't think that, I guess my question is, what proof do you have that you have many of these people out there to look for?
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Representative Stitt.
Madam Chairman, Representative Hallinan, I always appreciate the good debate. And I believe it was Bonfire of the Vanities, and what the prosecutor was always searching for was the great white defendant.
Yeah.
Great book. Captured New York City in the 80s quite well, I thought. By definition, half of our families are above median income and half are below. Wyoming is blessed to have relatively high median income. Our median household income is $60,000 in this state. It's much higher than many other states. You look at Kentucky or Tennessee or West Virginia. We are a higher income state typically. So what I'm thinking of is not fathers who happen to be trust fund babies or who just own lots of assets, but much more commonly are hardworking men who are in the oil field or work in the mines. What I see in my county are a lot of minors, right? They didn't necessarily go to college, but the good news is in that part of the country, you don't necessarily have to have gone to college. You can, with your high school diploma, you can get a job in the Trona mines and you're making $70,000, $80,000 a year. And they're working hard, they're earning it. I don't want to disparage that. They're earning their money. But we have sort of by definition, you're going to have this pool. And I believe the testimony from DFS was they think there's about 60% of all fathers that they simply couldn't find. And so what the income makeup of those families is, I guess I just don't know. Maybe someone from Department of Health or DFS would know. So it's a fair point but again, the current state of the law, the Medicaid Fairness Act as enacted, doesn't try to collect from poor fathers. We're not trying to squeeze poor fathers at all. That is not what the bill does. That is not what the statute does. The statute goes after essentially fathers who are above a certain percentage of the federal poverty level. So I don't know if that answers the question, but thank you very much.
More questions for Representative Stitt. Representative Romero Martinez.
It sounds to me like you tried to address a problem, and being the firecracker that I am, I think I might have mentioned that in a testimony last Thursday or Friday. My question is, if we kept this and didn't just repeal it and throw it away, if we were to do that, and you gave different varieties of solutions, and of course, I want to hear from the other stakeholders in regards to this, and then a comment to Dr. Hallinan, I don't really know where they're at, but I think maybe it might be because they're invisible based on what you can see or not see through the federal locator service. So is that part of why they're invisible? And if there was an amendment, would it be amended here or would it be amended in the House? Those are my two questions. Thank you.
Representative Stitt.
Madam Chairman, I have requested LSO to give an opinion on what our rules are, whether you can amend a repealer bill. I don't know what the rules are on that, but I haven't heard back from LSO on that. Representative Romero Martinez, thank you very much. Again, I want to be clear. It's not that DFS is doing something wrong here. It's that, and they can explain it better. It's that if they were allowed to access the federal parental locator database, they could identify the fathers. But their view, and it's probably correct, is that if there's not an open child support enforcement case, they're not allowed to. That is, this database was set up, I think, in the 90s and for this specific purpose, if that answers your question.
Thank you, Representative Ottman.
Thank you, Madam Chairman and Representative Stitt. What I'm wondering is, So a woman goes in to deliver the baby, and maybe you know this and maybe you don't. She goes in to deliver the baby. There's lots of paperwork to fill out. And even previous to that, with her healthcare plans and opportunities, isn't there some place there in the paperwork to say who this guy is and what he does and the income level right there? Thank you.
Representative Stith.
Madam Chairman, Representative Ottman, thank you so much for the question. It's actually quite fascinating. For Title 19, and DFS or Department of Health could testify more precisely, on the form for applying for this Medicaid benefit, if you're the pregnant mother, there's not a place where you say who the father is, okay? And my understanding from Department of Health is that this is a federal sort of form approved by the Center for Medicaid and Medicare Services that you can't change, okay? You can't change that form. You could have a separate piece of paper where you ask that question if you wanted to, right? So theoretically you could, but it would require a change of procedure. So the short answer is no, they honestly don't know who the father is. There's no obligation, I should say, to disclose who the father is on this application form. However, the mother is obligated to sign an assignment if there's two in favor of the Department of Family Services in the event that they pay out benefits for the child that they're allowed to recoup. Which raises the other issue, if I may, is that so far, I do not believe that DFS has, as a part of its practice, tried to contact the Office of Vital Statistics to find out if they know from the birth certificate who the father is, right? As of a year ago, it was their practice not to contact the Office of Vital Statistics, as they weren't even asking the Office of Vital Statistics for a copy of the birth certificate to find out who the father is. Would that work? I don't know. Yeah, I don't want to say that there's some magic easy solution to suddenly make this program that's frankly, and I admit this program's frankly dysfunctional right now. So I want to be clear about that. I'm not trying to say this is working. It's not.
And committee, let me just say, we do have DFS and the Department of Health, both are online. So, we can probably get better answers from them than to
Sure,
ask poor
sure.
Representative Stitt
Yeah,
to
sure.
hypothesize about the activities of state agencies. I was just going to ask, Representative Connolly and I are both on the Rules Committee. It does seem to me that there would be kind of a challenge, probably a rules challenge, and all of us gathered about the speaker as to whether we could insert changes into an activity on a bill that is a repealer. That I do think that might be a challenge. Representative Connolly.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. And I'd just like to, I've been Googling, listening, but Googling with Representative Hallinan's, personal examples about the ages of fathers. And just looking at the Department of Workforce Services data in terms of wages, though our median wage is high in Wyoming. When you look at the age of the typical father, and we'll just go with fathers here, which would be between 20 and 34, those wages are not high. The average wage is $19,790 for young men 20 to 24, and then $39,000 for those who are 25 to 34. You don't get those higher wages until they're much older, even at the average. Thank you.
Very interesting. Okay, unless we have further questions for Representative Stith, I think it would be helpful if we get the agencies on. Thank you, Representative Stith. Okay,
Chair?
we have Christy Arneson on. Donna, if we could let her in, I think, or any substitute person from DFS, but we may as well start with her and then we'll bring in Jesse Springer after that. And Donna, while you're working with these people, if you could find out, there's a name, Colleen Collins, and that person has a wyo.gov address, but I don't know what agency she is from. If you could find that out.
Madam Chair, Colleen Collins is from the Wyoming Department of Health. Would you like me to admit her now or wait?
Well, so we have, I have 4 names. Do we have any more agency people besides Collins, Springer, and Arneson?
At this time, Jesse Springer is not with us. He was on, but I don't see him. He seems to have gotten off the Zoom. Colleen Collins is the only individual I know who's from the Department of Health.
Okay, so let's bring in Ms. Arneson and Ms. Collins, and we'll take Ms. Arneson first and then Ms. Collins, and then we'll open it up after that. Hello, Ms. Arneson, I see you.
Good morning, Madam Chairwoman.
Great. If you just introduce yourself for the sake of the new members on the committee and the public.
Absolutely. Good morning, Madam Chairman, members of the committee. My name is Christy Arneson. I am the Senior Administrator of the Economic Security Division within the Department of Family Services. Within this division lives the Child Support Program, which I oversee.
So what would you like to tell us about the program, how it was intended to work, how it's working, any other input that you have? We'd be glad to hear.
Great, Madam Chairwoman, thank you. And if you don't mind, before I dive into some of the data and maybe answer some of the questions that have been asked, I would like to provide maybe just a brief background that I know Representative Stith had alluded to just on the Child Support Program and how it functions, as it is important to this legislation that currently is in place. If that would be okay with
Sure,
you, Madam
go right ahead.
Chairwoman. Great, thank you. So real briefly, I just want to explain how the Child Support Program works with relation to and how that is important with this legislation. So within the Child Support Program, it's a voluntary program. It's a federal program. So parents can choose to apply for the Child Support Program services. Once an application is submitted, we will act on that application to help that person establish child support, enforce child support, locate a parent, among other things. The other way that the Department of Family Services receives child support cases is by referral. There are a few programs, benefits programs, public assistance programs such as cash assistance within the Temporary Assistance for Needy Families program, as well as some Medicaid programs that require participation by a parent with the child support program in order to receive that benefit. So there is cooperation that happens between those programs, but we still have to receive an application or we have to have participation by that parent in order to move forward with the child support case. If we don't receive participation or an application from that parent, we simply report back to that public assistance program, whether it's cash assistance or the Medicaid program, that parent is not participating or cooperating with us. You may hear that word as well. Then that lies with that public assistance program on whether they can work with that person and whether they get to continue to receive benefits. So it leaves the child support program's hands at that point in time. And we do not have a case as far as child support is concerned. And Representative Stith is correct. If the child support program does not have an open case, it cannot pursue child support or in this instance, these birthing costs. So I find it's important because when we do get to the data, you will find that there are parents that are choosing not to submit an application once it's received with regards to the birthing cost case. So what I will jump, but if there are questions on anything around the mechanism of the child support program, I'd be happy to answer those questions before we dive into some of the data and to answer some of the questions that have been asked.
Questions for Ms. Arneson. And keep in mind that DFS and Department of Health are two different agencies, and Medicaid is in Department of Health. So probably Ms. Arneson will not be able to answer anything specific to Medicaid and payments for births because that's not her agency, just so that those of you who are new kind of get these teased out. Okay, go ahead, Ms. Arneson. Apparently no questions at this time. If you can talk a little more about the data.
Great. Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. So with regards specifically to these Medicaid birthing costs, as you've already heard, and I don't want to take too much time to reiterate that, the intent behind it was to get those birthing costs from fathers who may not have been participating in the birth of the child. So what we know is we've been doing this for almost three years now. And for some of the data we have to share with you today is that like Representatives just said, there is quite a bit of money, and Department of Health can talk about this with regards to the births. But 220, it looks from the most recent data we have, which was as the end of February, there was around $22 million reported to our agency from the whole 3 years, from July 1st, 2018 through the end of February 2021 with regards to birthing costs. The Department of Family Services Child Support Program has been able, and Representative Yen alluded to this number, has been able to reduce to judgment around $221,000 for birthing costs. And then and this is very high level, I will get a little more detail for you, but of that $221,000, the department has been able to collect just over $127,000. So which is around 0.5% is the collection of what is owed. Specifically with that $127,000, and the Department of Health can speak to this as well, but half of that money has to get sent to the federal agency, CMS, the Medicaid federal agency. The state only is able to retain half. So the state of Wyoming has received just over $63,000 out of this program. A little higher level, and since we're talking about costs, the administrative costs to administer this and to collect that $67,000 has cost $225,000, just over $225,000. So there is more money being spent than is being collected, which I know has already been discussed. And I think it's important because the Department of Family Services is not here to discuss what I think this is obviously a policy decision for the legislature on whether to collect these or to go after the birthing costs. We're simply here to provide data and to explain the mechanism in which the child support program and why there are complications for us to collect these dollars. So just a few more. I know there was a few questions, and I know Representative Stith had alluded to the Office of Vital Statistics. I do want the committee to know that we actually partner with Vital Statistics daily within the child support program. We do get birth certificates from them, but the caveat there is there has to be an open child support case. If there's not an open child support case, we do not get any information from the Vital Statistics because we don't need it until there's an open child support case. So what is happening here, and I can get into this data, is a referral comes from the Department of Family Health. We have a great sharing agreement between us and the Department of Health. We get data from them. Once we have that data, our child support program workers begin to work on that data. As far as we receive a list of births, we have the information of the mother. There may be information of the father there, but at the point in time we receive those referrals, the child support program cannot do anything with the information of the father. We focus on the information of the mother because what we are required to do is send an application to the mother. The mother has to make that decision. We inform the mother that this is the reason she's receiving the letter. We're asking her to fill the application out, and we inform her that if she doesn't, we will report back to the Department of Health, and the Department of Health will have to work with her on what that means for her receipt of benefits, if she's still receiving benefits. So applications are sent out to mothers. Mothers may choose not to send them back to the child support program. What I can tell you is we've sent over 2,500 applications out to mothers. We've received 708 back. So for multiple reasons, mothers are choosing not to send those applications back to the Department of Family Services to pursue birthing costs. In some instances, it's potentially because they're married and we didn't know that they were married, and so they actually wouldn't even fall under the statute because the statute precludes married couples. Sometimes it's because they are an intact family, and I know Representative Stith spoke about this before. So they are families that have been together for, in some instances, for decades, and but have chosen not to get married. And so they may choose not to want to cooperate because the father is in the home and the father may be providing for the child. These are just anecdotal stories we have heard. And there may be other reasons they choose not to send their application back or choose not to participate. We will not know all of those. We don't discuss that conversation. If we don't receive that application, we give them, I believe it's 10 days. There's certain timeframes put in place. If we don't receive that application, we report that back to the Department of Health, and Ms. Collins can probably speak to what they do with that information once it's received. What we know is on the cases we've been able to move forward with, and this goes to, Representative Flitner, maybe your question. We obviously do track their income once we can move forward. We do gather income information so that we know what to make their judgment and to present to the judgment to the court on how much they should pay of the birthing costs, because as Representative Stith indicated the statute has it as a tiered one. And so what we know based on our data is that just over, well, probably 54% of the fathers are falling below 200% FPL of the federal poverty level. Around 28% of fathers are falling within the 200 to 299% of federal poverty level. 7.6% are falling between the 300 and 399% federal poverty level. And 8.6% are at our 400% federal poverty level and above. So the majority of the families or the fathers that we are working with would be considered low income. As Representative Stith indicated, these low income fathers pursuant to the statute are, if they're under the 200%, then it's a zero, they don't owe any money. But what that doesn't, but that still requires the Department of Family Services Child Support Program to put in the work. We still have to have the work from our caseworkers and our attorneys to move forward on these cases to get to the point in which they don't owe anything. We do pursue judgments for $0, just so that that is on record. So there is still work being done, even though the father may owe $0. Excuse me. And then I'm looking at my data. I'm trying to see what other question you all may have had that I wanted to answer, but I think right now that's, I think just so you understand what our staff have to do, I think once we get it, we have to review the referral, we prepare application packets. If we get applications back, then they have to work to locate the father, because even we can't use, so the Federal Parent Locator Service, I did want to touch on that. It is a really great resource. So the Child Support Program, because it's a federal program, has really wonderful locate and other enforcement tools available to it. The Federal Parent Locator Service is a wonderful tool for location. However, in order to utilize it, we A, have to have an open child support case, and B, we also have to have the father's name. So we have to have both of those things for that to be a worthwhile tool. So if we have both of those, if we receive an application back from the mother, if we have the father's name, right, we'll work to locate them. We have to do some income determination. We do correspondence. We have to do legal document prep. Our attorneys obviously either work through settlement conferences or they have to get in front of a judge in order to receive a judgment. So there's court time. We have filing fees. So every time we move these, this process is legal in nature. So we have filing fees. In some of these cases, those filing fees were $85. Since then, if you weren't aware, filing fees have increased to $120. So every filing is $120. We have to do service of process on those legal documents. That averages about $70. It varies from county to county, but average across the state, we typically $70 per service of process. And then we obviously have postage and some other minor office supply fees. So those are really where a lot of these costs are coming from. And one note too, when we talk about the intact families, and I think Representative Stith did allude to this, the intact families in which we are pursuing birthing costs on our families that we otherwise would not be, the child support program would not be a part of, because they're intact just because they're not married. If they are intact and living together and providing for those children, the child support program would not be in their lives, as we would not be pursuing child support against either one of those families. So again, this again is a policy decision for the legislature. I believe we would agree that the mechanism of this living within the child support program, there are confines. There are requirements we have to enforce. One of those is an open child support case. And we can't mandate that. We can't mandate mothers to give us applications, and we can't mandate them to open a case and participate. And so it may be that another mechanism is appropriate. But for now, really just here to provide you the data of what we have seen over the last 3 years. And Madam Chairwoman, I'd be happy to answer any questions that the committee may have.
Okay. Questions for Ms. Arneson? Christy, I do have two. The first is just, if you can refresh my memory. So the federal poverty level requirements, if the father is living by himself, or, you know, we've got, he's as a one member household, he's got a certain FPL. Excuse me, if the father is actually living in the home, you know, as an intact family, are we considering that to be the FPL for a family of 3 or 4 or what, or could just, how does that work?
Madam Chairman, that's a really great question. I don't know the answer to that, but I think I can probably have the answer in a matter of minutes for you. So I will try to get that answer. I don't know if it's just the father, or if we're looking at the whole family. So let me get that answer for you.
And then the other question I had was, had a question in there. Oh, of the when you do your work with Vital Statistics to get the lists of the mothers, do you have roughly what percent of birth certificates have no name listed for father?
Madam Chairwoman, I don't know the answer to that either. I can ask our program manager here within the program that works directly with Vital Statistics. Or maybe, I don't know if Ms. Collins would know. I know that's not the area which she's in, but maybe someone from the Department of Health might also know that. But I could also, I can ask that question and get that data to you, if not during this meeting, after we're done.
Okay, any more questions for Ms. Arneson? Representative Hallinan.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Ms. Arneson, would you be able to give me, or maybe the whole committee, that breakdown of those people that you have the family of the income data on, that 54% are below, and the other numbers?
I wrote faster than Representative.
Madam Chairwoman and Representative Hallinan, we do have that data, and we'd be happy to send that over so that you all could have it in front of you.
I'll put my notes more towards him, but you could email it to us anyway. That would probably be, sometime we'll want it, no doubt.
Great. And Madam Chairwoman, we use the FPL for the father only.
Okay. So that would actually be, he could even be poorer than he looks, because if he's actually in the home and you're using the FPL on the father only, 100% of the federal poverty level for a family of 4 is somewhere around, I don't know, $46,000 or $50,000 or something like that, the 200%, whereas for one person only 18. So, if he actually is if he only is making $18,000 and actually trying to support people, that's even worse than it sounds, I think. Okay, let's move on to Ms. Collins from the Department of Health. Thank you, Ms. Arneson. Sometimes people circle back, so don't go far. Welcome, Ms. Collins. I don't know if I've seen you before. Are you new?
I am new in my position. I've been with the Department of Health for about, since 2012, working in the long-term care unit. And over the last year, I have taken on the role of Client Services Administrator.
Well, welcome.
Thank you.
What can you tell us about this program or about the Medicaid birth in general?
Yeah, so, with what Christy had said, the numbers that she talked about are correct in what I have, as well as what Representative Stith had for the Medicaid costs for births. What happens with us is once, as Christy talked about, we get information that the mother has not submitted an application or done what they need to do, is we gather that data up here at the state office, and we work with our customer service center to sanction the mothers if they're on a Medicaid benefit. This year, I will say, sanctions have not taken place since the public health emergency as a result of the federal requirement for us to get our additional 6.2% federal match. We have to keep people on until the end of the public health emergency, except for reasons such as death, the client has requested closure of their case, or they are no longer a resident of Wyoming. So we are tracking those sanctions so that when the public health emergency is done, we will put in those sanctions into place. So we are tracking all of those. We're and ensuring when the sanctions have to go in that they happen. So prior year sanctions, we look at, make sure that occurs. In addition to that, We submit into DFS all the birth costs. So there is a report that they receive from the Department of Health for the birth costs. I think there was a question about, could we add questions onto our application when a mother had their baby in the hospital? And Representative Stith is correct. We have a federal form of an application that we are required to use that also is the form they use for the federal marketplace. So we are limited to the questions that we can ask per CMS and the federal regs there. I think there was also a question on how many fathers might be over some of these FPLs. I do not have any numbers that I would be able to provide as to how many fathers might be in an intact family that have a wealthier income. And I think Christy had wondered if we might have the numbers of the births where father is named on the birth certificate. I do not have that number either, but I think maybe between Christy and I, we might be able to work on that with Vital Stats. The other thing that I have to share, our person that tracks sanctions and monitors cases, it's about 30 hours a month of her time to do the tracking, to get some of the lists together, to communicate with the CS, our customer service center. If we have sanctions, that's the average amount of time that they are spending. I looked back at one of our staff members who tracks the number of payment agreements that we have in place, number of fathers who've made payment in full. And I have a total dollar amount collected since December of 2019 with me. We have one payment agreement in place. We have 2 fathers who've made payment in full, and the total dollars collected since December 2019 was about $2,380.43. Sanctions by year, we're running about what Christy said, about 700, a little more than 700 a year.
Ms. Collins, if I could just interrupt you there for a moment. So the word sanctions sounds quite grim, and perhaps it is. If a woman does not send over the information, doesn't enable a case to track down the father, so then she's subjected, I hate to use that word, but to the sanction. What are the sanctions? I mean, are you able to disenroll her and the baby from Medicaid entirely, or what happens to
Yeah,
her?
not the baby, just her. She would be the one that would no longer be eligible for Medicaid until she complied.
And so just following there, so for and I suppose that she's covered for, 6 weeks or something like that after the birth, but then she would be, as the parent would only be eligible for Medicaid up to 30% of the federal poverty level, I think, right? I mean, you have to be extremely
It's
unemployed to
very
act.
low. And then they can be on for 60 days after the birth, 60 days postpartum.
But so the disenrollment of the mother from Medicaid after the 60 days, if a woman has any sort of job at all, she's not going to be eligible anyway, right? Because that's the 30% federal poverty level, which would be like about.
Yeah, pretty much. The wages would have to be extremely low for her to still be eligible. It's very low.
Right. Okay. I just wanted to clear.
Yes.
If the committee doesn't understand what I was asking there, feel free to pin me down a little bit more. Representative Hallinan.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Would it be possible for the sanction to expire prior to, if she gets pregnant again, would she still be sanctioned, or would that no longer apply? Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Ms. Collins.
Yes. So Madam Chair, Representative Hallinan, For the most part with these mothers, again, once they have had the birth with the child, they're usually only on for that 60-day postpartum. They may transition into another Medicaid program, which we call a family MAGI program. MAGI stands for Modified Adjusted Gross Income, and that is where the income levels are very, very low. So if she went into the family MAGI, at that point in time, that person would be required to cooperate with child support, because that program is a program where people have to cooperate with child support in the Medicaid arena. So if she failed to cooperate with child support at that particular time, then they would be sanctioned through the duration until cooperation occurred. What most often happens, though, is these folks are on for maybe 60 days, that postpartum period, don't qualify for another Medicaid program for themselves. Their children may qualify, but if the adult has any income, that adult isn't going to qualify. So by the time she's done with the 60 days, then the sanction ends because she's in no other program. If she gets pregnant at a later date and then delivers the baby, then we would do another birth cost. She could end up with another sanction if she didn't cooperate there. So it's really contingent on the income and if they qualify for a Medicaid program that would require child support requirements at that point.
More questions for Ms. Collins? Are you wanting to? Representative Ottman.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chairman. Just to go back over that, just to line it up. So are we just talking, before we were talking about the necessity for a woman to file an application. Right now, did I understand it that if they're on Medicaid for 60 days afterwards, it would be a requirement that they fill out that application? Or did I misunderstand?
Ms. Collins.
Yeah, Madam Chair, Representative Ottman, the regular application for Medicaid and what happens in the hospital when they have the birth does not require the naming of the father. So the person can get on Medicaid without naming the father. And there is not necessarily a child support requirement. What that's fallen into is the birth cost requirement. The mother then, once they have the baby, is on Medicaid for 60 days postpartum. After that time, if her income level is such that she can remain on Medicaid and go on to what we call the Family MAGI program, that's the point in time that they have to cooperate with child support. We do the appropriate paperwork for child support and submit that in.
Okay, more questions for Ms. Collins? I don't see any more. Thank you. And Ms. Collins, seeing as you're kind of new to us, we often think of questions later, so don't go too far. Okay, Donna, it looks to me like we have only one other person in the waiting room. Is that correct? Ms. Johnson?
Sorry, Madam Chair, I didn't have my mic on. We have two people in the waiting room, but only one with their hand up. It's Tara Muir. Would you like me to admit her?
Sure, send her in. Welcome, Ms. Muir. If you'll introduce yourself to the committee, we would be glad to hear from you.
Sure. Thank you, Madam Chairman. My name is Tara Muir. I'm the Public Policy Director with the Wyoming Coalition Against Domestic Violence and Sexual Assault. I just felt the need to jump in very briefly, not to take up too much time. We are in support of this bill. because what we feel with this kind of Medicaid birth cost recovery work, it's really handcuffing young women. They don't have many choices often. If they're that young, that low income, we see them in our programs across the state, newly pregnant, whether that's a former boyfriend who was abusive, the babysitter, rape situations, trying to pressure young women to name fathers and going down that kind of public policy path is not the one Wyoming should take. Other states have found that that's so penalizing of young women. If we were to take some steps to try and force the names of fathers or to drag them into cases to make all this happen, we need our moms to spend that time getting healthy, getting their child healthy, or grieving if they've had to give that child up for adoption. And I know there's probably other federal statutes around if it's an adopted child. But our anecdotal evidence is a lot of young women are getting pregnant as a result of an abusive relationship or rape. And we now have a statute that don't allow them to terminate parental rights of the rapist unless she goes and reports it and unless she gets a conviction. And no young mom is going to put herself through that usually. So none of these cases are ideal. And I do understand Representative Stith's concerns about dollars, but we need to figure out somewhere else to find it and not go after these really vulnerable people in our state. And that's all I wanted to chime in this morning. Thank you for taking the time to listen. I'm happy to take questions.
Questions for Ms. Muir? Representative Ottman, your speaker. There you go.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Ms. Mueller, just say this situation isn't because of looking for dollars. Say it's looking to have some accountability for the perpetrator or other half of this child. What is the thoughts on that? I mean, is there a better way to, according to your policy that, or a policy that you would suggest?
Ms. Muir?
Thank you.
Madam Chairman, thank you, Representative Ottman. Great question. Then we have to really back up and look at how we teach young people about consent, healthy relationships. You want a child born in a home with love, and the different kinds of family scenarios that Representative Stith laid out don't incorporate the really unhealthy ones that we do need to find a way to hold rapists and abusive, in this scenario, men, accountable, because they're too often we hear these long stories of years of abuse, and he's kept her pregnant and probably, isn't marrying her just to make sure she's got a place to live, and he purports to care for those children. And it's very abusive. And we have to, our programs across the state work with those people to figure out what's the safest way to leave and when, and how do you gather your documents, and how do you sneak off in the middle of the night or when he's at work. That's kind of a sidetrack, but we can't allow the state to come bombarding into these people's lives and demanding that now is the time it should be safe. Now is the time we're going to make you name the father. Try and rescue you out of that when we don't have enough economic resources to help get her and maybe 4 other children set up in a decent place to live. Maybe she's got to go back home to whatever state she's from. We want to hold abusers accountable, no question. I don't think it needs to be during this time giving birth to children. There's many other ways to hold abusive fathers accountable. I would also say, when moms do name fathers, usually the biggest threat fathers give victims of abuse: I will take you to court and take your children. I will make sure the court believes you're the messed up, addicted, mentally unstable mom, and you will never see your children again. And I have to say, we hear those stories almost every day in Wyoming. that that is indeed what happens. If she is married or not married and does hold herself out as in this relationship, when it's time to try and sneak out in the middle of the night with your proper documentation for all your children, she usually ends up in family court with a big custody battle, and she often loses. There's some good research that shows she usually loses when custodial or biological father fights for those children. It's a different topic too, but related. Thanks for the question.
Representative Ottman. And we'll make sure to keep it tight to the topic.
Okay, and thank you for that information. I guess where I was trying to go with this was, is there, since we have heard that there can be continuation of these activities and responsibility for more and more and more children, where is a point where we can say there has to be part of accountability on the part of the parents to be responsible for something that the state, I mean, I don't know where that line is, but I know there should be one. If you're going to receive services like a paycheck, you know, you usually have to show up for work. So where would the line be drawn on something like this? Thank you.
Ms. Muir.
Madam Chairman, thank you. These are hard decisions, and it is a public policy decision. Certainly, as we're looking at a huge budget crisis this year and trying to figure out how do we diversify our economy, is there other ways to help support the payment of this birth in other kinds of taxes? And I know that's a big topic this year. But given the small amount that DFS is able to collect from these cases, this isn't the public policy decision that should go forward. This is too fraught with danger for humans in our state. We just have to look into other pots. Thank you.
Any more questions for Ms. Muir? Representative Romero Martinez.
I'll try to keep this brief.
Right, and
For
sure it's a
sure.
question.
Do you think that, a couple questions. Do you think this, I don't know if you can answer this or not. I'm just going to ask it and then you can tell me if you can or not. Do you think this policy needs to be repealed? First question. Second question, do you think Representative Stiff's suggestion not to get rid of it, but figure out a fix, which we haven't really figured out to do with rules, and I wouldn't know. Do you think that the answer lies somewhere within the concept of giving it to the AG's office and then setting up some type of a credit finding mechanism or tool? Second question, thank you.
Good job condensing the questions. Ms. Muir.
Madam Chairman, thank you. Another great question. I think this should be repealed. We are one of a very small minority of states who does this, trying to recoup these birth costs. Because most states are just finding this is not the best way to deal with this issue. And these are other states that have significant births and a lot of low-income families that they can be going after the fathers, but they just don't do it. One, because it costs too much, and two, it's just bad public policy. So I think this should be repealed. I'm trying to remember your second question.
Whether it could be redone via the AG's office in a collections agency or some other redoing to achieve the same goal of accountability.
Right. Yes, and I'm remembering the word tool. We could help try and figure that out. Again, we want healthy relationships. If fathers were involved with the women they get pregnant in a healthy way, certainly both parents would be saying, hey, we want to own up to this and we want to pay it, especially because we've capped it the way we have, which sounds reasonable. It's the why our programs exist. There are a lot of families in trouble, and trying to insert some kind of collection agency through the AG's office is just the state coming in again in a horrific way in people's lives when they're at the most vulnerable. I don't know. I had lost internet connection there for a while. If we talked about just what was the potential amount of money we're recouping, or what we have recouped, I think I heard a small bit that was actually able to be recouped. I can't imagine that the Attorney General's office could do much better given the federal requirements. And those federal requirements are such because it's public policy to let these young families, particularly young families, get healthy, be in a better situation for the next birth, doesn't have to rely on Medicaid. And that's the kind of public policy, if we took a few steps back to see how to make those families healthier, higher income, have access to birth control, that's an issue. We'd all be in a better place. But a bill like this just injects the state into people's lives that I don't think Wyoming in particular should be proud of.
Okay, any more questions for Ms. Muir? Seeing none. Donna, is there any more out there in TV land?
Madam Chair, I don't see anyone else with their hand up in the waiting room.
Okay, then public testimony is closed. Committee, is there a motion on the bill?
Move the bill.
Moved by Connolly, second, any second? Seconded by Hallinan. How odd that you're on the bill. Bonnie, that moved by Connolly, seconded by Hallinan. Is there any discussion on the bill? Representative Romero Martinez.
I appreciate all the comments, questions from the board. I think what I hear from after listening to everybody, and Dr. Hallinan had said, where are they? I can't remember if it was Dr. Hallinan, but it sounds to me like many of these fathers are probably in my district, just east of my district, just south of my district. Well, just northeast, west, and south of my district.
And right in the very center of your
And right in
district
the
too.
center of the state in Casper. And I know a good percentage of them I work with. And you got to hold these guys accountable. My question was not answered in terms of accountability by per se the last speaker, but any or person I asked the question to. But I think it was answered by some of the members of this panel and the Senate Minority Leader, and also the statistics given by the first two speakers, with 54% below 200 federal poverty level. And the numbers you're going to send us, I won't regurgitate them. I think we just need to find a solution to holding people accountable. It's not necessarily going after those most vulnerable. Let's not forget that there's a vulnerable person in the womb as well. Seems we have forgotten or hasn't been spoken about. This is probably a bad policy right now because of cost, but the mechanism or the tool is what's important. You can't just say fathers aren't going to be accountable while simultaneously defending what appears to be on the mother's part. Yes, she's vulnerable, but simultaneously, whether she knowingly or unknowingly is abiding and aiding and abetting, she's doing it under duress or threat of violence. That's kind of scary. So we're just going to let them work it out on their own. Okay, I get it, but there's still no solution. I don't know the solution to it. But I think these people are obviously in the neighborhoods that have the biggest population, Cheyenne and Casper. And it breaks my heart to see it. And I hope we can come up with a resolution. Those are my comments. Thank you.
Any more discussion on the bill? Representative Hallinan.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Well, I think there's probably no group in our society that faces more contempt than a deadbeat dad. I think that's our natural tendency is to want a bill that's going to punish them. But I don't think that this bill does that. Obviously, 54% of these individuals are not qualified for punishment. And that would leave the other 28% only make 200 to 299% of the poverty level. So they're not going to pay very much of a price. I don't think it's maybe 10 or 20% of the birth cost for them. So I don't think that this bill really does much in way of accomplishing its goal. Maybe we could put these guys in jail. I don't know. But I don't know that that's an answer either. So I really think that this is a problem that needs to be looked at, but in a different way than this bill. So
Representative Hallen, if I could just insert, I think by this bill, you actually mean the original bill. The bill before us repeals the program.
yes,
So
that's what I mean.
I just
is
want to
that-
make sure that people who are listening
I
understand.
mean Representative Stith's bill. For that reason, I'd be against this. I'd be in favor of this repeal. I don't think this bill is going to be, it's not going to pay for itself. It's losing money. And we're in a deficit right now. And I don't know, we gave this bill the last time it came up, we gave it some more time. We wanted to see if they could solve some of the problems with collecting. And apparently they have not done so, because the amount collected is only about 1/4 of the cost, or one 1/4 of the cost is the amount that the state of Wyoming gets. The state has to give half of what they collect to the feds. Maybe we can get them to pay half of the cost of the program. I don't know. But I'd have to be in favor of this repeal for those reasons, Madam Chairman.
More discussion on the bill. And actually, I do want to just say a thing to all of you new people. Welcome to the Labor Committee. We've had a lot of discussion, nearly an hour and a half, on a 2-page bill. And the reason that I am okay with that is because we have so many new people. And the discussion of this bill, as you see, has brought in a lot of agencies, a lot of discussion about the issues. And especially for those of you who are new to the legislature, not necessarily new to the specific committee, but what you will really see is that, and I don't mean any disrespect to the struggling people out there in the state, but other than school funding, the vast majority of money that we spend is spent for poor people, broken families, people with mental health or substance abuse program. I mean, people with serious problems, families with serious problems. We spend a lot of time, a lot of effort on that. Whether the government can actually make people's lives better from their underlying problems, that's a discussion that a lot of people have. But we're here as the government, not as some other private agency or something like that. And so I really felt like it was going to be worthwhile for us to hear this bill at the great length that we have discussed it, because welcome to the next 2 years of your life on this committee. For the most part, they're very difficult issues that we have. And I feel like in hearing this, I think we probably all agree that fathers should be accountable to care for their children. I mean, who would disagree with that? The discussion that we have is, how do we make that happen? How do we help families succeed, whether single parents or intact families? How do we bring good things for little children, for old people? I mean, those are the issues that we discuss on this committee all the time, right? And the solutions are very difficult. And so that's why that's why I was willing to spend what I foresaw to be a lengthy time on a 2-page bill, because I think it's really worth all of us as we develop throughout the committee time to really see what we're trying to work with. So anyway, okay, having been called, Bonnie Jo, would you call the roll, please?
Representatives Clifford.
Aye.
Connolly.
Aye.
Flitner.
Aye.
Hallinan.
Aye.
Ottman. Martinez.
Aye.
Representative Stibar left an aye vote, Madam Chairman. Representative Wharf left an aye vote, Madam Chairman. And your vote, Madam Chairman?
Aye.
Madam Chairman, we have 9 ayes.
Okay, and I would just say lest I don't want Representative Stith to go away sad. I commend the attempt at holding fathers accountable to help care for their children. I do think because of how that this is drafted as a real repealer, I don't think it's amendable to solve the problem. I think we're far better off backing out. If there's potential to take another run at the problem in some other way, we would glad to hear you again. Okay, the committee is adjourned and you will be receiving, actually on Wednesday, we'll hear one of my bills. And my bill is a bill to revisit an interim committee bill that the Senate didn't quite understand. So we're hearing it again. So you'll hear more about that later. Thank you.